Hey guys, how you going? It's VaulSC here. Welcome to another video about infiNity on this channel. Today I'm just going to be sharing a few thoughts about the DEFIANCE Kickstarter, which everybody's been talking about recently. Corvus Belli doing their first Kickstarter launch as far as I know. This video is not going to be a review of the DEFIANCE game. It's not going to be a complete review of everything that's come out of it. It's really just going to be me sharing some thoughts and my reaction to what's been going so far and the small amount of reading I've been doing with it. So maybe if you guys aren't aware, there's a Kickstarter, obviously pretty easy to find. Just type in infiNity Kickstarter DEFIANCE. You can go to their page and just have a look at it and see the detail information. Obviously, you've got a dungeon crawler game based on the infiNity universe, and Kickstarter's there. If you support it, you can get a copy of the game and quite a lot of models that come with it. And one thing that people have generally been talking about is, whether it's worth it. And that question is always going to be a matter of, individual personal interest. There are going to be some people who really like the look of the models, want to collect the models, have use for the models, not just in Defiance, but on the tabletop, and they really like dungeon crawler games. And so the Kickstarter is a no-brainer, buying into it, spending a lot of money on it. It is pretty expensive, but again, if it's your hobby and you can afford it and you're going to get the value out of it, that's great. Then, of course, there are going to be a group of people who look at this and go, well, it's a dungeon crawler game. There are a lot of other dungeon crawlers that I can play. I'm not particularly enticed by the idea of doing that in the infiNity universe. A lot of the models I don't specifically need. I'd rather collect a particular specific sectorial or faction and stick with that rather than just buying all of these extra models. And, these are people who will give the Kickstarter a miss. For me personally, when I first saw that this was coming out and I saw what was included, I thought, damn, all of those Shazvasti sculpts look really, really cool. I collect Shazvasti, love Shazvasti, so it's probably going to be necessary for me to buy the set and paint up the models. Even though I probably won't play Defiance very much, I thought about, well, what I could do is commentate on some Defiance sort of games for YouTube, and that might be interesting to viewers, but I'm not really sure. So initially I was going to back it. The thinking was, I think, not so much the basic set, but I think the platinum one was what I was going to go for. I haven't even been able to get track, but more recently I've been thinking about giving it a miss just personally. I'm not saying that I would recommend people don't buy it. I think that if you really like it, obviously you should support it and buy it. But for me personally, what I've been thinking is that I've already got enough combined army miniatures that I can play any of the profiles that are out for Shazvasti, and even proxy stuff like what are they called? Tiger creatures. I know that Defiance will be introducing that, but I quite like using my proxies for that as well. But when it comes to like Nox Troopers, Shishkin, that kind of stuff, Shrouded, I've got those models generally covered, so I don't specifically need to double up with my existing collection. The new sculpts are really cool, but again, it's just a matter of paying for them and buying them. And when I think about it and think about all that money, I figure, well, I could just put that money into, say, my next project, which might be like a whole bunch of terrain for a new table, or a specific sectorial that I might start out and play. I've been looking at Foreign Company, been looking at Bakunin, been looking at this and that, and maybe, sticking with O12. I'm not really sure, but those are alternative options to the Kickstarter. Again, if you like the idea of board gaming, you like the idea of that new sort of system, that new game, you like the idea of having those sort of limited edition style sculpts, then great, this may well be for you. I think I'll just pause quickly and just jump over to something I just very briefly looked up before starting this video, and that is that there are a lot of other dungeon crawler games out there. I'm not really a board gamer. I don't really know this stuff, but having talked to a few people who have tried the Defiance game, yeah, it's okay, but there are a lot of other companies and gamers and designers out there that are specifically doing this already. So just at a cursory glance on the internet, here's a top 10 list of some other games. A few of them I recognize. Gloomhaven, I've heard people talk about that a fair bit. Obviously, the Games Workshop stuff, I think Silver Tower is in there somewhere. I don't know if that's any good. But clearly, there are a lot of other people out there putting a lot of effort into dungeon crawler board games and are probably a bit more dedicated and sort of solely purpose to that and focused than, say, Corvus Belli would be. Not 100% sure about that. I'm not the best reviewer for that, but again, I'm not really intending to review that kind of thing in this video, really just pointing that out at this stage. Now, interestingly, there are a whole bunch of new profiles come out, and I do want to spend a little bit of time in this video covering them. I've chosen a time to do this where, okay, some of the profiles have come out, but they're probably still going to release more. I'm not too sure if the Aleph one's come out yet. It might have by the time you watch this video, maybe it already has. I saw something about an Aleph-themed Krakot Renegade floating around, which looked insane. But what they've done here is they've done some crossover profiles so you can use the characters that are coming up for Defiance in Games of Infinity. And I think generally what they're trying to do is make it so that they're fairly average, just good enough that you might take them sometimes, and that's the right thing to do. As usual, it's hit and miss. They've released some profiles that I don't really think that they'll see much use in the actual game, and then one or two profiles which will see a lot of use because they've made existing units redundant, which I'm not too happy about. But we'll come back to that in a second. I'm just seeing if I had anything else to say about the Kickstarter. Oh yeah, people have been asking me, whether the reinforcement packs are a good idea. I will have a bit more to say about that before the video finishes, but perhaps let's just go through the profiles, and I'll just, very briefly review the profiles. I won't have a lot to say about them, but let's just have a talk about them, yeah? So these ones are the first ones that came out, I believe. Let's go to, let's start with Shishkin actually, because this is the one profile from Shazvasti that's come out, and the one sort of bad guy profile from Defiance. So what we've got here is the profile attributed to the new sculpt of Shishkin, which is looking pretty cool, where she's sort of leveled up into Guilo armor. Shishkin, I think, traditionally is thought of as a Cadmus who has used the Morpho scan on Achilles. That's why her profile is similar to Achilles. But what has happened here is that she's leveled up to be a Guilo, getting armor 4, BTS 6, that kind of thing. So she's more expensive, and she's gained some options, but she's also lost some things as well. And the general consensus in the community is that you're trading some things for other things, and you're increasing her points cost. So it's not an upgrade or a downgrade, it's been called a side grade really, where you're paying more points for something that's generally thought of as equivalent to the previous version in terms of its capability and power. Let's break that down a little bit more. So Armor 4 BTS 6 is definitely better than, what is it, the Armor 1 BTS 3 that she currently has from memory. That might not even be right, but it's roughly the case. The problem with that, though, is you'll lose the nano screen. So when she's walking around the table out in the open, she's effectively got the same armor as this does. But when this is in cover, you're talking Armor 7. Armor is really, really good for defending and AOing, and the thing about Shishkin is that she's not very good in the reactive turn. She's just got that Red Fury, and the Fatality level 2 is just not kicking in as heavily. So what I like to do with Shishkin is really hide her in my reactive turn, where she's not making that much use of the armor. When she's moving out and attacking, generally she's going to be winning just about every face-to-face roll because BS15 and Fatality level 2, and she might be in a link team. So that's a really, really important factor. The other thing which is problematic for this profile is that, you want to walk around the battlefield running and gunning with this model and killing things. And part of the value of the nanoscreen is that it's affecting the face-to-face roll, whereas the armor isn't affecting the face-to-face roll. So if you come around a corner and move out in the open and you shoot something in the distance, your opponent is not -3 to hit against this profile, whereas it would have been with the nanoscreen. So the nanoscreen profile is actually killier. It's actually doing more damage because your opponent isn't getting as many hits, which are negating your dice rolls, if that makes sense. So that's a real problem. I like the fact that it's got a explosive close combat weapon, but again, the issue is that you're almost always using that Prathion ability instead of your close combat weapon, which kind of makes it a little bit redundant. Yes, she's still capable of killing the objectives, but she had decharges for that anyway. Now, Prathion, if I'm not reading this inaccurately, is moved up a level, which is a big deal. So would you rather have Prothean level 4 or level 3? Well, obviously Prothean level 4. That puts her in sort of Umbra Samaritan levels of goodness in close combat. And it makes it much easier for her to quickly get from 2 wounds up to 4 wounds, which is a really big deal. Rolling 2 dice in close combat is way more efficient against those smaller, juicier victims than the CC 24 plus 3. So that is a big reason why I sort of, am tempted to take her and run her if you can afford the extra points. This might be the kind of profile where I think about, running her and just vanilla combine, because I've been looking at some profiles, some list options with that anyway, which seem pretty cool to me. Multi-terrain still there, that's nice. Free agent still there, that's nice. Although with the extra points, you're starting to put her into limited insertion lists more often. So there is that. Kinematica 2, level 2 still there. The rest of the stats seem to be pretty similar. You miss out on the multi-rifle profile, but I can't believe, I don't think anybody was really taking that anyway. There's probably a couple more things that I may have missed. I might just quickly bring up infiNity Army just to refresh my memory on what the older version could take. That won't take a sec. So, is she lost anything else, really? It's more about the nano screen than anything. There you go, Armor 1 BTS 3. So that's a new Shishkin. She's interesting, but she's not really blowing us away, really, with... and look, it's probably a good thing she's not replacing the old Shishkin. I mean, this is something you might think about taking. It's not suddenly a direct, strict power creep improvement, and that's good. Let's talk about the Ariadne guy, Caden First Strike, Don. So this guy's basically a Wolver. For 35 points, you're getting a Wolver who's just absolutely extreme in close combat. This guy is just nuts because of the CC23, NBW, and quite importantly, the T2, the Tesium close combat weapon with dual wield as well, so he's benefiting from the armor. I quite like that because let's say you go and you're whacking a tag. Oh, did I forget to say Berserk, by the way? So if you're going in and whacking, say, a tag in close combat and you're Berserking it, NBWing it, you're very likely to get a crit, but even if you don't, it's half armor. If they fail the armor save, that's 2 wounds, so this guy's very, very lethal in close combat. The thing is, with just a T2 rifle and Ballistic Skill 12, if he's moving along with the Wolvers, and if that's all he's doing, you may be sort of paying extra points for something that you might not be using if you're not getting into close combat. Let's just have a quick look at Caledonians. We'll try and find Wolvers. So, yeah, 35 points for a T2 rifle. Yeah, I mean, paying an extra 2 points for that extra close combat ability has... To me, that seems like a no-brainer, unless for somehow you just absolutely strapped for points, you just can't afford it. I mean, let's just compare the rest of his stats. Yeah, he's really just plain old Wolver profile. For some reason, Willpower 14 instead... Oh, Physical 14 has changed. No, that's exactly the same. So I was looking at the Willpower. Phys 14, Willpower 13. That's basically it. CC 23, CC 21. So you're going up in terms of CC... and you're getting some additional close combat prowess, basically. So if you're gonna be running a T2 rifle Wolver in your army list, then this guy's a no-brainer, really. The thing is, though, that if your strategy is about having some other gun in there, or maybe if you can't really justify running a Wolver in the first place, then there's really no point getting him anyway. But yep, strictly better than your basic T2 rifle Wolver for the points. So I definitely think he'll see some play. Then we'll go to the Pano one, Indigo Spec Ops Captain Uma Sorensen, if I'm saying that right. So this is an interesting one. It's a medium infantry character. We don't 100% know what she's like in terms of linkability, but I think the thinking is that these are generally going to be wildcard characters in certain sectorials. I'd be assuming that she's in with the Varuna sectorial. That seems to be the theme of her, since she's a little bit stealthy. Let's go through it. So you've got a camouflage version. It's good that she's 4/4 speed, so that makes her a lot more desirable than, say, a 4/2 speed she does have multi-terrain though. Climbing Plus is very interesting for Pan-Oceania. There's that level of mobility. Only problem though is that she's just sitting there with a couple of SMGs and a breaker combi rifle, and you're paying 37 points for her, and this is still just a one wound model. So the question is, are you wanting to move out and attack and do the killing with this person, or are you wanting to use a Crocman, or are you wanting to use the Zulu Cobra, or I can't remember the name of the guy who has the jammer versus the guy who has, I think it's the Delta. No, that's the O12 guy. I can't remember my Varuna names, but yeah, it's really just a matter of, okay, are you going to be paying that many points for the model that's using up your orders and using up your slot, your role of attacking with? I'm not 100% sure. You can take a slightly cheaper version which has mimetism, which I wouldn't recommend because Mark Estate is a lot more powerful than just plain mimetism. The ability to have surprise attack as well as the ability to move places without being seen and discovered, and it's so defensive being in a marker. So if you've got an extra 3 points, it's definitely worth investing into that extra state, I feel, even though 3 points is a lot. Then there's the lieutenant option. This is again a bit of a weird one because you want your lieutenant to survive, but this is a model that sort of screams out to have orders spent on it and move out and attack with. So I'm not really sold on that. Even if we have a chain of command option sitting around somewhere, running around with a lieutenant of this sort of points to wounds ratio, it's just hard to justify 4 points for a one wound person. I mean, you might have a Crocman if this is vanilla moving out there, and you start with infiltration. You've got TO camo, you've got that combi rifle there, X visor, that kind of thing. Armor 3 BTS seems to be hogging up a lot of the points here. It's a tough one. She's definitely not as impressive as some of the other profiles we're looking at here, so I think we'll move on. Let's go to the Jing guy, which is Captain Qingao, Invincible's officer. Probably butchered that pronunciation. So this guy is very similar to the old Zuyong HMG. He does pick up Fatality level 1, which is not bad. If you're doing that much spray fire with a linked Zuyong HMG, having that +1 damage is actually a big deal because you never want your opponent to pass armor saves when you're pumping all the orders into things which need to be efficient kills. Kinematica level 1 won't come up very much, but Veteran level 1 certainly will, and I like the fact that you've got an option in Invincible Army now where you've got at least one guy immune to jammers. So if you're really dead set on playing Invincible Army because they're your favorite army, and you're having to go to an event where it's like looting and sabotaging, and you're going to have to move somebody on there and actually get in range, you've got this guy. Not that he can kill stuff in close combat, but, you know, maybe the looting and sabotaging was a bad example. I think capture and protect maybe, where you need one guy to move in range of the jammers, pick up the objective and run off with it. This might be your man to be able to do that. Nanopulse are also kind of cool. I don't remember Zuyong's having them, so that's something. I like that. 43 points, pretty expensive, but again, if you really need that Veteran level 1, I think it's worth it because having such an important mechanic, having that much of an impact on the game really is a big deal. The Lieutenant 2 option is a bit naff because this is a faction which now has the Lieutenant level 2 that hangs out the back of your army, and you've got those NCO options around which are really cool, like the Mo Wang and Tai Sheng. So this guy really interferes with that, where if you're putting a Lieutenant 2 option on a guy who might die, and I don't like it. I mean, you save half an SWC, but if you're playing Invincible Army and you're running that link team, you should be running it with the Dao Ying plus Tai Sheng. That's the most efficient way, definitely more efficient than this. And if you're running vanilla, well, this guy's going to be by himself, and he's not going to be the most efficient HMG anyway. You'd much rather be using like a Xian Warrior or a Hack Tao, in my opinion. So he will see some action on the table. I will be looking at him for Invincible Army, but again, Invincible Army is not in a great spot right now. They still need more stuff. Yes, we will be talking about the Legon guy in a minute, but for now, this guy's not super impressive. Speaking of super impressive, though, the Nomad one is actually the one profile that's come out so far, which is kind of nuts. And it's just, again, the typical Corvus Belli accidentally making things a little bit too cost efficient. So you take Jasmine for 18 points here. and realistically, the real costs come down here when you talk about the inclusion of Billy. But the comparison here obviously is with the Alguacile. Again, no idea how to pronounce that term. But as you can see here, 18 points and 5 SWCs for the Alguacile hacker. Everything is the same with this profile, and then you add the bonuses on top. So you get BTS 6 out of it instead of Armor 1. Well, of course, you'd much rather have BTS 6 than Armor 1 because all this is going to be doing is hacking. You're not really going to be fighting with it. You're not going to be moving out with your hacker. So you've got a submachine gun compared to an SMG. Again, they're not going to be firing those guns. And if they are, it's probably because a drop troop is coming down the back of your army to kill your hacker or something like that, in which case the submachine gun is actually better because it's going to be short range most of the time. Then you get a pitcher, which the Alguacile just doesn't have. Cyber mines, which Alguacile just doesn't have. +1 whip, the Alguacile doesn't have. And this is a model that's just pretty much only going to be using its whip and its BTS. So I find that kind of insane, really, that you've got exactly the same points cost for a model that's really strictly better, if we're being honest about it. And then she's got the Maestro upgrade on top of that, which is really huge because you're defending yourself against enemy hackers trying to pick you off. And if you've got the repeater network set up, she can whip 14 Maestro enemy hackers. It's just really rude that this profile's there. On top of that, she comes with a 6-point regular order, which can just hang around and provide an order of return. So this is just a plain buff to Nomads, even though Nomads didn't need a buff. I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed with Corvus Belli just adding things to Nomads which just purely make them better. So we saw the Puppet Master, for example, just giving them counterintelligence just like that. We saw the Heckler just giving them a jammer in camo state just like that. Now you've got Jasmine coming in, just giving them a more cost-efficient hacker and an even better regular order. So vanilla Nomads is just starting to get better and better and better, and they're not really balancing that, which, again, it's irritating. A couple of other ones have come out recently. Let's grab Ensign Show. This is Catherine Show. I really like her because you have the option now of taking a 15-point lieutenant with Whip 14, and that's a much better choice than just your basic Kappa pleb. So it gives you that alternative option to the Alpha Lieutenant, and quite often we're looking at taking the Alpha Lieutenant all the time, but at 26 points, you're paying a whole bunch of extra points for that counterintelligence with Strategos 2. Now, that's usually worth it, but if you want a bigger list and put the points into other things, which you may want to do, then instead of taking a 12-point lieutenant, which costs 1 SWC, you can save the SWC and take Inside Show, which is an option I love. And what's even better is you can use Holo Projector level 1 to pretend that she's something like an Upsilon HMG or sniper, and just keep her in total cover. And when your opponent's counting up your SWCs, they assume, okay, you've got 1.5 SWCs there, you're unlikely to have that Link sniper, but you actually do have a Link sniper because your opponent miscounted it based on Holo Projector level 1. So this is a buff to O12. I think that they needed it. And I love the fact that she's got a nanopulser as well, so your opponent comes around the corner just trying to kill off a random combi rifle guy, and then you nanopulser them. And it might be a chain of command one as well. So let's just quickly talk about the chain of command one. I really like that because, again, you are holo projectoring in a meaningful way. You've got a model which can just nanopulser something out of the blue, and you can use, for example, a lieutenant option on your Gamma, for example, Gamma HMG Lieutenant or Feuerbach, running around with that guy, and the chain of command back here keeps it safe without having to fork out for the Alpha chain of command, for example. You do that a lot more cheaply here, which is really, really cool. Assuming you don't want counterintelligence, and sometimes you don't want counterintelligence because you can just run a 10-order list, right? So that's Inside Show. Really like her. I think she's good value, and she definitely buffs the faction, and they needed it. Before we get to the more recent Legon, let's just quickly talk about medical specialist Rahman Rouhani. This is an advanced version of the Ghulam Doctor Plus, if you can spare an extra couple of points. So the real discussion is whether it's worth the extra couple of points. I think that it is, but again, if the value you're getting is not really going to kick in, saving 2 points somewhere, I mean, there are a lot of profiles where you add 2 points and you get something quite meaningful. So Doctor Plus, you got Whip 14 Doctor there, 16 points, and, you know, does what it says on the tin. For an extra, what is it, 2 points, you are getting +1 willpower. So if, you know, willpower 14 plus Doctor Plus wasn't enough, you've got that. BTS 6 isn't going to matter a whole lot. The Medjector, though, is what you're getting there. So if you're planning on using a lot of stuff which is going to take arrow hits, die, and you want that reliability, this guy's really good. If you're going to be playing something like countermeasures where the experimental drug's going to come up and you want to make absolutely sure you're going to be reviving guys, especially guys that don't have cubes, you want as high a chance of reviving them as possible, and that's where this might be worth an extra couple of points. A lot of the time, though, when I'm playing these sorts of factions, I don't even bother taking the Doctor Plus just because of the cost. What I mean by that is when I'm playing something like Deschart, for example, where you've got another Doctor option. But yeah, it's not a huge game breaker choosing between the Ghulam or this guy, and that means he's quite well designed in my view, because you'd never want a model making other profiles redundant, but you also wouldn't want to release a profile that nobody ever takes. So, you know, if you've got the Kickstarter, you've got Rahman Rouhani in there, sometimes he's going to show up in your Haqqislam army, sometimes he isn't, and I think that's really good design. Okay, so I think that just leaves us with this guy here, Legon, who's new. A lot of people really like this profile. He's interesting, to say the least. Medium infantry means that he gets to deploy up the board a little more quickly, and 6-4 speed immediately puts him on my radar. Like, I love fast troopers because you're wanting to get more efficiency out of your model. I mean, imagine a 4-4 model comes out, but it has tactical awareness. You know, you immediately look at it and go, okay, well, that's more efficiency, more value, more punishing my opponent when it's my turn. And speed, you know, allows you to achieve the same thing in the long run. Albedo is something which Yuching hasn't had before, which is kind of cool seeing that now. So you are able to sort of move around and not get shot at specifically by that Varuna sniper. You can fire at other things that it otherwise would have been covering. Same thing with the intruder, stuff like that. Allows them to close the distance with some of those models and punish them up close. MSV1, again, very good for dealing with something like a Bagmari or a Kamau, or generally things like that, Rodox, whatever it might be. Bioimmunity plus NWI means he's effectively a 2-wound model. So if we go back and compare this guy to, say, Uma Sorensen, same sort of cost, but this guy's definitely better, you know, for the similar points than this model, because, well, he's got 2 wounds instead of her mobility. But then he's got the mobility anyway, because he's got the 6-4 speed, and he's got medium infantry deployment. I think she had that as well, actually. Yeah, no, they're both the same on that thing. But when it comes to shooting, no, she's got we've got the MSV1 here on this guy, which is nice. Although without having camouflage, so there is that. But similar armor BTS, so that's similar, but again, when you factor in 2 wounds versus 1, I think that's really the deal breaker. The downside of this guy, the drawback, is that, you know, he's a burst 3 guy, and if you're going to be spending all of your orders and your game plan is to have that turn where you make a run with him, you're relying on a guy who's just rolling 3 dice, right? And a lot of the time he may actually be out of range of things. Whereas your game plan may instead be to send out a Rushi, or send out a guy with an HMG, or whatever that may be. And you are going to encounter some games where this guy turns out to not deliver the value, just because he gets into these awkward shootouts where he isn't quite using the optimal range band, or the 3 dice just kind of whiff, and he doesn't do very well as a result. I like that he's not hackable. I think that's really cool, with 2 wounds, effectively. Close combat, not very capable there. Let's look at the distinction of the 2 loadouts. So Shock Marksman Rifle, Nanopulsar Blitzen. That's probably the one that I would run, because I want the extra usage of the range, and I've still got Shock. The Chain of Command option is not super needed, because this is a faction, again, that's probably going to be running that Dao Ying Lieutenant level 2 at the back of your army that's not really going to die. So there is that. However, if you need him to be a specialist, chain of command might be more relevant. So if it's that mission where you get +3 to your whip checks on objectives for being chain of command, that might make him a bit more appealing. You do save 2 points, but again, SMGs, you've got to get within 8 inches for him to start really tearing things up. He has the speed for that, but you're just going to come into line of fire of things like, you know, random warcore. You imagine trying to fire at a warcore at long range, you know, hitting on 10s on 3 dice, warcore shooting back at you 13 on 1 dice, or even 16 if you don't have cover, then you fail your BTS check and this guy's stunned. What do you even do there, right? So that's not great. I can't remember if bioimmunity makes you immune to stun. Maybe it does. But I think you guys see my point, really, is that he runs into some of these awkward shootouts. Even though he's got MSV1, I mean, imagine being shot at by a TO sniper that suddenly appears from 24 inches away. Well, you're -3 for range, -3 for cover, -3 for the TO if you factor in the MSV1. So he's hitting on like 4s with 3 dice, and the other guy's firing back on like a 12 or a 13 to hit on 1 dice with a DA weapon. So it's tough. You've got to play this guy carefully. He's not just suddenly the miracle solution to Invincible Army or Yu Ching in general. He's a usable character, and I think Corvus Belli have done a good job. I have to give credit where it's due. I think they've done a good job designing a character that's reasonably balanced. We all thought he was going to be able to fly and have airborne deployment because of his wings that look very much like Aleph wings, but apparently it's just to give him speed, and he's going to be an Aristaya character where he transforms. So I think I heard, if I heard correctly. So that was a little bit of a look at the profiles. I hope you guys got something out of that. I want to finish this video up by just quickly talking about the reinforcement packs which are becoming available. Oh yeah, Trish is coming out, so I think that's another profile we're going to need to do at some stage, but that can wait to another video. So reinforcement packs are purchasable. Are these packs good for people collecting these specific factions? The first thing I want to say is it's a little bit annoying that there are pre-existing boxes which have, say, 4 Morlocks, or 4 Quang Shi, or 4 Unidrons, but you're only getting 3 of them in the reinforcement pack. And that can be irritating, because if you start out by playing Yu Ching and this is the first thing you buy, well, Quang Shi are availability for, and you want to take 4 Quang Shi in every list if you're playing vanilla Yu Ching, unless it's maybe some weird limited insertion list. But you're only getting 3 of the models, if I'm reading correctly. So if you're starting Yu Ching, I wouldn't buy this. And if you already have the 4 Quang Shi and you're buying this to reinforce your army and add it to it, well, you're ending with 7 Quang Shi. So if you're playing what is it called, Imperial Service, you're only going to have 7 of them, and you're going to be wanting to take 8 a lot of the time. So unless you somehow have 1 Quang Shi floating around, it's not really worth it. Having said that, though, if you're willing to buy an individual Quang Shi off somebody else, or do a split pack with somebody, and that tops you up, then yes, this is a good place to start for Invincible Army, because all of these models are very usable in Invincible Army. If you're playing vanilla, well, maybe not so much, because what is it? What's this guy called? The Zan Ying, maybe not the best choice in vanilla. Some people like it. I mean, it's not a terrible box set. I just don't think it's really the best option. Coming to Morlocks, well, Morlocks are, I think, available in total for some reason, and they're really amazing. So this particular package here, not bad for starting off. I mean, you've got the intruders here. For some reason, we've got 2 intruders. I wouldn't take more than 1 in a list, but they are really sickeningly good. So if you're running a small list, you'll still do well with them. Zoe and Pywell are not my favorite character duo, but they're still solid. And the Kreezer, most people like them. So there's nothing really wrong with it. I just tend to like the other starter sets a little bit better. But they have included models which are all usable, and you're still going to be on a reasonably good path with them. The Aleph set, you definitely want the drones. You're definitely going to be using the Dakinis and the Divas in your link teams. Shakti is a bit of a questionable model, which I don't really see a lot of value from. But she can definitely proxy as something else. There's no reason why you can't have Shakti proxy as your Naga. So if you're willing to do that, then yeah, this is absolutely a great starter set. The Pano one, okay, this is a Varuna set if I ever saw one. You've got the, is it a Varuna set? I think this guy's more Acontecimento, isn't he? I can't quite remember. Let's just quickly take a detour here. That's important for you making a decision, to be honest. So if we go Varuna, there's a Ulan and a Squallow. I'm not seeing the Tikkabalung anywhere. So maybe you can't take that in Varuna, which is a little bit awkward, actually, because we're seeing Patsy Garnet, we're seeing the Kamals, multi-sniper there, seeing Zulu Cobra. So, yeah, with 2 Zulu Cobras in there, this is definitely a Varuna package. So why have we got a Tikkabalung? Let me just double-check this. Am I in Varuna? Have I just chosen the wrong one? I think I've chosen the wrong one. Varuna, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so Varuna can take bots, Squallows, Cutters. There's Patsy. This is Zulu Cobras. Okay, so unless I've just clicked the wrong button somehow, you can't actually take a Tikkabalung in Varuna. But all of these models here are for Varuna, really. I mean, that's just strictly speaking, Zulu Cobras, Kamals, Patsy, that's the core of Varuna, right? And if you're playing vanilla, well, you're probably not going to be wanting to take just random like Patsies and Kamals because they are not linkable. So I wouldn't recommend this reinforcement pack, really, unless you're going to swap this tag for something else, or proxy it or something like that. If you've got a friend who wants your Tikkabalung and you're going to give it to them in exchange for something else, like something which is usable in Varuna, go for it. And if you're not going to be playing Varuna, like if you're picking up Acontecimento, these Kamals and things, again, aren't going to be very good unless you're counting them as Bagmari. So it's a bit of a strange reinforcement pack. I would be careful about buying it. The Morats, okay, so we've got 4 Hungries, which is great because you can make a link team with the Osnat, so I love that already. I think that's really good already. The Razyat, definitely great model and very usable in Morats. Kornak, fantastic because the Strategos level 1 and yeah, just generally a good lieutenant option. The Suryat HMG is something you're going to be taking a whole lot because of tactical awareness. So this is a brilliant core pack for Morats. I'd definitely recommend that because you can make the Harris with Kornak and take the core with the Osnats. Osnat turns the Hungries into regular orders, so this is brilliant. If you're going to buy this, I would recommend picking up a Raktarak, which can then wildcard into your Harris with Kornak and your Suryat, so your Harris is set. You've got the core already. You've got this guy here, so you would want to buy a Raktarak, some Echadrons, maybe the drones. So you've got a Q drone and an R drone, that kind of thing, and you're already geared up towards a really good, strong Morat army, in my view. The Onyx one, this is interesting because you get an Umbra Samaritan and the Zeodron, but you can't make the Haris unless you've got another Zeodron. So if you go out and buy the Zeodron pack, you're getting 3 Zeodrons, and you can't run them all at the same time. So this already seems a bit lame, unless for some reason you already have a single Zeodron in your collection and you want to add that to them so you can make a Harris. This also comes with 2 Fractars, which is not really ideal because it's a bit redundant. You want to run 1 Fractar and put up assisted fire and drop that. If you're taking 2 of them, either it's going to be overkill and you didn't need the second one because you're pumping all the first orders into the first one is getting a lot of kills, or your opponent has something which shuts both of them down at once, so they're not very, very useful. I very rarely see people taking 2 drop troopers and it working out really, really well in a lot of games. And then the Unidrons, again, it's a bit awkward. The Samaritan can't link with them. You're going to need more of them to make up the team. Usually you would add an additional Nexus and then add in the Unidron. If you're really going to force yourself to buy this reinforcement pack, you'd probably want Kernau, you'd probably want an individual Unidron somewhere, and I don't know what you can do with the rest of the guys. Again, I don't recommend this. I think you should start with the basic Unidron box of special weapons and buy Kernau, and then expand your list from there by buying Echadrons, by buying R-drones, by buying that kind of thing, and building it up from that base. Or if you really want to go the limited insertion route, you buy the box with the double Zeodrons, you buy the Samaritan, and then you have a smaller team after that. So there's other ways to construct a good Onyx list. I don't think this reinforcement pack's that great. So yeah, it's a bit hit and miss. The Morite reinforcement pack is probably my favorite of the bunch. The Nomad one, the LF one is probably my next favorite, followed by the Nomads one. The Jing one is very questionable, and the Pano one I'd probably give it a miss. Same with the Onyx one. That's my personal feeling and recommendation. I'm sure there will be people that disagree, but those are my thoughts. And I think we'll leave it there. Hope you guys got a little bit out of my basic review and thoughts of the Kickstarter. Sorry that I didn't go into the actual mechanics of the game. Haven't really played it, not that interested in it. But I hope you guys make the correct decision when you're working out what level of Kickstarter or whether to support it or not, and that turns out to be a good product. See you guys next time.